The very first thing we have to do to access our databases in a cross-platform manner is to declare an interface. So let's right-click the shared PCL, click Add New File, and we want a general empty class, and let's call this SQLite. And hit enter. And then we want to change this class to an interface. So an interface, SQLite. And then inside here, let's get rid of this constructor. And we want, first of all, come up to the top and let's insert a using SQLite, because we need that. Then down here, start typing SQLite connection, get connection. And the reason we need this interface is because databases are stored in different locations on Android and iOS. So this interface allows us to talk to the individual iOS and Android projects and actually get a connection to the database. Once we have that connection, then actually putting things into the database can be done in a shared project sort of way, because the code would be the same. So let's save that. So to go along with that, let's first insert the database connection inside our Android project. So come down to Android, right-click it, click Add, New File, and again we want an empty class, and let's call this SQLite and then underscore Android, and hit enter, and it's created for us. Now we're going to leave this as a class, but at the top we need to add some usings. So first we need to add system.io, because we're going to be accessing a file, so we need to access input output. And then of course we have a using Xamarin.forms, and that's all we need. Now what we need up here is some kind of declaration that tells us this is a dependency of something else that exists in our PCL. And the way we do that is by typing assembly, inside square brackets this is, semicolon, dependency, that should be a capital D, dependency, and this dependency has a type of, and then in brackets we want just do it x10 dot droid dot SQLite underscore Android, and then close off all your brackets and make sure they're correct. Okay, so once we've done that, let's come down into our class, and under SQLite Android we're actually going to define a region. So put a hashtag in and region SQLite, and we want to say this is an implementation, and then in here we're actually going to write the code that allows us to get this connection. So SQLite connection, SQLite connection, and this is going to be the get connection that our SQLite actually referenced in the shared project. So it's going to come over to Android, find this, and it's going to go down here and actually get the connection for us. So in here we need a var file name, and this is going to be database.db3 as the extension, and then we need a var documents path, and this is the internal documents path for our app, And the way we get that is by environment dot get folder path, and we want environment dot special folder dot personal. So we've got many options here, but we want to keep this secret from other apps, so special folder dot personal. Close off your brackets. Then we need to create the path of the documents path and the file name together. So we say var path is equal to path dot combine. And then we have to pass it two paths, so of course the documents path and the file name. And what that's going to do is actually blend those together and give us a path to the database. And then we have to open up a connection, so var connection is equal to a new SQLite dot SQLite connection, and this asks us for a path which we just created, and store time as ticks, let's have that as true, and close it off. And then finally we have to give this connection back, so we want to return the connection, because up here in our public declaration we said we're going to pass back something of this type, an SQLite connection. And then underneath here we're going to close off this region, so we say end region. And that sums up the entirety of the Android portion of accessing the SQLite database. Let's do the same on iOS. So come down to iOS project, right click, add a new file, and we want SQLite underscore iOS, and take note of the capitalizations there, and hit enter, and you'll be very glad to know this is extremely similar to the Android version. So we need some using our system.io and using xamarin.forms. And then we need our assembly declaration, so assembly, and this is a dependency, which of course has a type of, open the brackets, just do it x10 dot, and we want iOS, because it's going to come and look at this namespace, dot SQLite underscore iOS. Close off your brackets, and that does that. And then down here we want this class to actually inherit from iSQLite. Let me just check we've done that in Android. We haven't. I knew I'd forgotten something. iSQLite. There we go. So here we are in the iOS one. In the iOS one, we again want to go past this constructor and create a region and create some access code. So what we can do actually is just copy the Android code straight over to here. So I can drop it in. I've pressed copy on an empty space, so it's copied nothing. Command C to drop that in. There we go. So again, we have our get connection, we have a file name, and that's going to be the same as before. And here, again, this is the same because it goes and finds the personal folder for this app on iOS. And then this is going to be slightly different. In fact, before here, we need to have a library path. So under documents path, let's have var library path is equal to path dot combine, and we need to open up the documents path, and we actually need to add two dots, and this is related to the file system that's in operation on iOS. Don't worry about it now, but just know we need it for this. And then we want to open up a library folder and close that off. And then in the next line under path, instead of documents path, we actually want library path. and then everything is the same as before. We create a connection and we return that connection. Now I'm just going to scroll up, and I have an issue here. It says we have a problem. Let's just see what it is. SQLite, that's because here I need to capitalize this L. I've made a slight error. You've got to watch out for this when you're programming, as this capitalization really matters. Okay, now just to recap, inside our shared project, way at the top here, we created an SQLite, and this says this is an interface. I want you to go off into the Android and iOS projects and Windows Phone if you have it, and I want you to get connection. So it wanders over here, finds this dependency, and grabs the connection for us, both for Android and iOS.